Hi, I'm Annie Fitzsimmons. I'm your Washington Realtors Legal Hotline lawyer. And in this episode, we're going to answer the question, which condos are subject to WUCIOA? If you're not familiar with WUCIOA, you need to get familiar. It is going to become part of the lexicon of every real estate broker in Washington state. WUCIOA is an acronym, and it stands for the Washington Uniform Common Interest Ownership Act. You will hear a lot more about WUCIOA between now and January 1st, 2028. On January 1st, 2028, every condominium will be subject to WUCIOA, and many, if not most, single-family residential plat communities in Washington state will also be subject to WUCIOA. But this episode is looking at a more isolated question, which is this. Between now and January 1st, 2028, how can I, as a real estate broker, determine if a condo is subject to WUCIOA or not? Here's the answer. If the CC&Rs for the condominium complex were recorded after July 1st, 2018, that condo is a WUCIOA community. The condo complex is subject to the Washington Uniform Common Interest Ownership Act. And if the CC&Rs were recorded prior to July 2018, but an amendment to the CC&Rs has been recorded after July 1st, 2018, and so there has to be an amendment recorded after July 1st, 2018, and the amendment must include language opting the condo association into WUCIOA, RCW 64.90. Somewhere in that amendment language, the condo association must have adopted or opted the association into, under the regulatory authority of RCW 64.90, which is the Washington Uniform Common Interest Ownership Act. Now, why do you care? Because if the condominium complex is subject to WUCIOA, then the resale certificate has to be consistent with the requirements of WUCIOA. Using statewide forms, that would be Form 27 CIC. But if the condo is not subject to WUCIOA and a resale certificate is required, then the form of resale certificate would be Form 27. They are different resale certificates. And you need to make sure that the proper form of resale certificate is used for the condo that you're selling. If the wrong form is used, then the buyer retains the right to rescind the transaction until the correct form is delivered to the buyer and for 5 days thereafter. Hopefully, the management association, if there is one managing the condo association, knows whether the condo is subject to WUCIOA or not. It might be as simple as picking up the phone and calling them and asking, are you subject to WUCIOA? And then confirming that they're using the proper resale certificate. Professional management should already be there, but in a case where you're working with a condo, selling a condo, and you have any question as to whether or not the condo is subject to WUCIOA and whether the association is using the right form, you're going to have to dig a little deeper. And so thinking about what I said, were the CC&Rs recorded after July 1st, 2018? And if not, was there an amendment recorded? And if so, what is the contents of that amendment? That means, brokers, that you are going to have to get that preliminary commitment from title. Listing brokers, of course, you should be ordering it as soon as you take that listing. You get the preliminary commitment for title, and you can answer that first question pretty simply by looking at the exceptions to title. Where does it identify that the CC&Rs were recorded, and then look at the date of recording. Was it before or after July 2018? If it was after July 1st, 2018, it's a WUCIOA community. You don't have to look any further. But if it was recorded before July 1st, 2018, and there's also an amendment that's been recorded after July 1st, 2018, then you are going to have to get that amendment and you're going to have to look at the amendment itself to determine whether or not the condo association opted in to regulation under RCW 64.90. I would always suggest you start with a phone call to the management association, but you cannot always rely on their answer. Sometimes they're wrong. If you have questions on this topic or any other, please visit warealtor.org and follow the links to the Legal Hotline. Thank you for being a Washington Realtors member.